Your mother called me trailer trash at my own wedding, Margaret, I said calmly, setting down the mortgage statement I'd just paid. Now I write a $4,200 check every month to keep the roof over her head. The irony wasn't lost on anyone at the table, except maybe my mother-in-law herself, who still believed her son had married beneath him despite the evidence staring her in the face. Sunday dinner at the Morrison house in Westchester had been a tradition for 12 years, ever since Daniel and I started dating. The colonial house with its manicured lawn and circular driveway had intimidated me once. Now I knew every crack in the foundation, every repair it needed, every payment that kept it from foreclosure. Gabriella, must you handle those financial papers at dinner? Eleanor Morrison's voice dripped with the same disdain she'd perfected over the years. At 68, she still dressed for Sunday dinner like she was attending a country club luncheon, pearl necklace, cashmere twin set, the works. Her silver hair was perfectly coiffed, her makeup flawless, her contempt for me unwavering. Just reviewing our monthly expenses, I said, folding the statement. Someone has to. Daniel shifted uncomfortably beside me. My husband of 8 years still struggled with the family dynamics, caught between his mother's expectations and the reality of who actually kept this family afloat. His father, Robert, studied his pot roast with unusual intensity. Speaking of expenses, Eleanor continued, I ran into Victoria Ashford at the club yesterday. Her daughter just married that developer, you know, the one who built those gorgeous homes near the golf course? Now that's what I call marrying well. She looked pointedly at Daniel. Some girls understand the importance of compatibility. Mom, Daniel warned quietly. What? I'm simply making conversation. Eleanor's smile was razor sharp. Though I suppose Gabriella wouldn't know the Ashfords. They don't exactly frequent. What was it you said your father did? Construction? General contractor, I corrected, though she knew exactly what my father did. She'd been throwing it in my face for over a decade. Yes, well. She waved dismissively. Blue collar is blue collar. The dining room fell silent except for the tick of the grandfather clock, an heirloom Eleanor never failed to mention was worth more than some people's entire education. The mahogany table gleamed under the chandelier, set with the Morrison family china that had been passed down for 4 generations. Eleanor had made it clear early on that it would skip my generation. How's the boutique, Gabriella? Robert asked, clearly trying to defuse the tension. Despite his wife's influence, my father-in-law had always been decent to me, even if he rarely stood up to Eleanor. Expanding, actually, I said. We're opening a 4th location next month. Eleanor's laugh tinkled like breaking glass. For little shops? How ambitious. Though I suppose someone has to cater to people who can't afford Bergdorf's. I'd stopped mentioning that my little shops were luxury boutiques carrying designer pieces, that my clientele included A-list celebrities, that last year's revenue had exceeded $8 million. Eleanor heard what she wanted to hear. Remember when she showed up to the Gardner wedding in that dress from Target? Eleanor asked no one in particular. I was mortified. Absolutely mortified. Poor Daniel, having to explain. It wasn't from Target, I said quietly. It was vintage Halston. If you say so, dear. She patted my hand condescendingly. Not everyone can recognize quality. It's something you're born with, really. Breeding shows. Daniel's jaw tightened. Mom, that's enough. I'm trying to help, Eleanor protested, if Gabriella's going to be part of this family, though heaven knows I've tried to convince you otherwise for 8 years, she needs to understand certain standards. We're not like her people. Her people. As if my parents were some alien species instead of hardworking immigrants who built a successful business from nothing. My people, I said slowly, are doing just fine. Oh, I'm sure they are. In their way. Eleanor examined her manicure. Though I did hear something troubling from Bitsy Worthington. Apparently, there's been some financial difficulty in the neighborhood? Properties being foreclosed upon? Such a shame when people live beyond their means. My phone buzzed. I glanced at it, a notification from the bank confirming the mortgage payment had processed. The same notification I'd gotten every month for the past 3 years. Speaking of living beyond means, I said conversationally, how's your golf club membership going? Still enjoying the platinum level? Eleanor's eyes narrowed slightly. Of course. The Morrisons have been platinum members for 40 years. 37, Robert corrected quietly. We had that brief period when we downgraded. Ancient history, Eleanor said quickly. A temporary blip. Daniel and I exchanged glances. That temporary blip had lasted 2 years and nearly cost them their house. It would have, if I hadn't stepped in. You know, Eleanor continued, Victoria's daughter received the most gorgeous emerald necklace as a wedding gift from her in-laws. A family heirloom. Of course, we'd planned something similar for Daniel, but... She trailed off meaningfully. Well, bloodlines matter when it comes to heirlooms. Eleanor, Robert said sharply. I'm simply saying what everyone thinks. Gabriella knows she wasn't our choice. Don't you, dear? A Morrison should marry someone of similar caliber, education, background. Someone who understands which fork to use without Googling it. I went to NYU, I reminded her. Summa cum laude. State school, she sniffed. On scholarship. It's not the same as proper schooling. Daniel went to Yale. Like his father. Like his grandfather. Like his brother who flunked out sophomore year? I asked sweetly. Eleanor's face flushed. We didn't talk about James, the eldest Morrison's son who de-squandered his trust fund and now lived in his parents' pool house at 43. James is finding himself, Eleanor said stiffly. He's an artist. He's unemployed, Daniel said flatly. And he's borrowed. Family business stays private, Eleanor cut him off. Unlike some people, we don't air our troubles for the world to see. We handle things, internally. Another buzz from my phone. This time, a text from my accountant about the quarterly payment for Eleanor's credit cards. The ones she didn't know I paid. The ones Robert had confessed were drowning them when he'd come to my office 3 years ago, hat literally in hand. More of your little business concerns? Eleanor asked, gesturing at my phone. Really, Gabriella, this obsession with money is so, gauche. People of quality don't discuss finances at dinner. People of quality don't default on their mortgages either, I said quietly. The silence that followed was deafening. Eleanor's perfectly composed face cracked slightly. I beg your pardon? Nothing, I said. Just thinking out loud. No. Eleanor set down her fork carefully. What exactly are you implying? Robert shifted in his seat. Eleanor, perhaps we should. What mortgage default? She turned on her husband. Robert. I watched the man who'd once run a successful investment firm shrink under his wife's gaze. The 2008 financial crisis had destroyed his company, but they'd hidden it well. Sold the vacation home quietly, liquidated investments, downsized staff. But keeping up appearances in Westchester was expensive. There was no default, Robert said carefully. Everything was handled. Handled how? Eleanor's voice had gone sharp. You told me the firm recovered. You said the investments. Can we not do this now? Daniel interrupted. Please? Eleanor turned her laser focus on me. You know something. What do you know? I could have stayed quiet. Should have, probably. But 12 years of snide comments, of being told I wasn't good enough, of watching her try to break up my marriage, it all came rushing up. I know that your house payment is $4,200 a month, I said evenly. I know your property taxes are $18,000 a year. I know your country club dues are $1,500 monthly. I know your credit card minimums run about $3,000. I know Robert's Social Security and pension cover about half of that. Each fact landed like a physical blow. Eleanor's face had gone from flushed to pale. How dare you? I know because I pay them. The words hung in the air like an explosion. Every month for 3 years. The mortgage, the taxes, the club dues that would have been revoked, the credit cards you maxed out maintaining your lifestyle. All of it. No. Gabriella, Daniel said quietly, reaching for my hand. But I was done. Done pretending. Done letting her humiliate me while I quietly saved her from humiliation. That vintage Halston you mocked? It cost more than your monthly mortgage payment. My little shops could buy this house outright. My father, the blue-collar construction worker you sneer at? He taught me about hard work and smart investments. The scholarship you look down on? It left me debt-free to build my business. Eleanor stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the hardwood. Robert, what is she talking about? Robert Morrison, former master of the universe, looked every one of his 71 years. The firm never recovered, Elle. We've been underwater since 2009. If it wasn't for Gabriella. Eleanor shook her head. No, we would never take money from her. We didn't have a choice, Robert said quietly. It was that or lose the house. She set it up through a trust so you'd never have to know. 3 years, Eleanor whispered. 3 years of Sunday dinners, and you let me? Oh God. She sank back into her chair, the perfect posture finally breaking. Every time I criticized your clothes, she said faintly. Every comment about your background. Every suggestion that Daniel could do better. And you were writing checks to keep you in this house, I finished. Yes. Why? The word came out strangled. Why would you do that? I looked at this woman who'd made my life miserable, who'd tried to convince her son to leave me countless times, who'd never once said a kind word about me. Because Daniel loves you, I said simply. Because Robert came to me desperate and ashamed. Because despite everything, your family. And because, I paused, choosing my words carefully. Because I could. Because I'm successful enough to help without hurting my own finances. Because that's what people with real class do, they help family, even when that family treats them like dirt. Eleanor's perfect makeup was ruined now, mascara tracking down her cheeks. I called you trash, she whispered. At your wedding? In front of everyone. Yes. You did. I told my friends Daniel married down. I know. I tried to set him up with other women. Even after you were married. I know that too. She looked at me then, really looked at me for perhaps the first time. And you still paid my mortgage. Every month. On time. Like my father taught me. The grandfather clock chimed 7. Outside, November wind rattled the windows that needed resealing, another expense I'd quietly covered last winter. I don't know what to say, Eleanor admitted. That's a first, Daniel said dryly. Despite everything, I almost smiled. You don't have to say anything. But maybe you could stop. Stop the comments. Stop the comparisons. Stop trying to make me feel small. Because Eleanor? I'm not small. I haven't been for a long time. She nodded slowly, seeming to shrink into her cashmere. The Queen of Westchester society reduced to a woman living on her daughter-in-law's charity. The Ashfords, she said suddenly. Victoria's daughter. The one who married well. A bitter laugh escaped her. Their house is in foreclosure. Victoria told me yesterday at the club. Asked if I knew anyone who might help. And I sat there, grateful it wasn't us, never knowing. It could have been, Robert said quietly. Would have been. Eleanor looked around the dining room, at the china she was so proud of, the silver that had been in the family for generations, the house that sheltered it all. Then she looked at me. Thank you, she said, the words seemingly pulled from somewhere deep and painful. I don't deserve it. God knows I don't. But thank you. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Daniel squeezed my hand under the table. I believe, Eleanor said carefully, I owe you an apology. A real one. Not just for today but for everything. Every cruel word. Every slight. Every time I made you feel unwelcome in this family. She took a shaky breath. I was so focused on bloodlines and breeding that I missed what really mattered. Character. Kindness. Strength. The things you have that I clearly lack. The room was silent again, but it was a different kind of silence. Not the tense, hostile quiet of before, but something almost fragile. I don't want your apology for my sake, I said finally. But I'll accept it for Daniel's. And moving forward, I need you to understand something. I'll continue paying because I choose to, not because I have to. But my help comes with conditions now. Eleanor straightened slightly, some of her old steel returning. What conditions? Respect. For me, for my family, for what I've built. No more comments about class or breeding. No more comparisons to women you think Daniel should have married. No more sneering at my parents or my background. I met her gaze steadily. You'll treat me as what I am, your son's wife and the woman keeping this family afloat. Or the payments stop. Gabriella, Robert started. No, I said firmly. I've eaten 12 years of disrespect in this dining room. That ends today. Eleanor can choose, her pride or her house. But she can't have both anymore. Eleanor Morrison, who'd ruled her social circle with an iron fist wrapped in pearls, looked at the mortgage statement still sitting on the table. Then she looked at me. You're right, she said quietly. You're absolutely right. I choose my house. And my son. And the daughter-in-law I should have valued from the beginning. She stood again, more slowly this time, and walked around the table. For a moment, we just looked at each other, the construction worker's daughter and the fallen society queen. Then, for the first time in 12 years, Eleanor Morrison hugged me. It wasn't a warm hug, Eleanor didn't do warm. But it was real. And when she pulled back, there was something different in her eyes. Not love, maybe, but recognition. Respect. Now, she said, voice still unsteady, perhaps you could tell me about your boutiques? The real story, not the version I created in my prejudiced little mind. I'd like to know about the business my daughter-in-law built. The successful one. I looked at Daniel, who was watching his mother like he'd never seen her before. Then I nodded. All right, I said. But first, let's clear these dishes. And Eleanor? Next Sunday, I'm cooking. My mother's recipe. The construction worker's wife who raised a daughter capable of saving your house? She makes the best lasagna in New York. And you're going to love it. Eleanor blinked, then something that might have been a real smile crossed her face. I'm sure I will, she said. I'm absolutely sure I will. As we cleared the table together, something Eleanor had never done in her life, I caught Robert wiping his eyes. The family patriarch who'd once commanded boardrooms crying over dish duty. Later, as Daniel and I drove home to our brownstone, the one Eleanor didn't know I'd paid cash for, he took my hand. Thank you, he said simply. For everything. For my parents. For not destroying her when you could have. For being, you. She's going to backslide, I warned. Old habits die hard. Maybe. But at least now she knows who you really are. Who you've always been, even when she couldn't see it. I thought about that as we drove through Westchester's winding roads. Eleanor had finally seen me not as the girl who wasn't good enough, but as the woman who'd been more than enough all along. The woman who'd saved her house, preserved her dignity, and kept her secrets. My phone buzzed, next month's automatic payment reminder. I looked at it and made a decision. Tomorrow, I'd call my lawyer. Set up a proper arrangement. Something that protected everyone but made the truth clear. Because Eleanor was right about one thing, breeding did show. And my parents had bred a daughter who knew that real class meant lifting others up, even when they'd spent years trying to tear you down. Even when they'd said you'd never fit into their family. Even when you were the only thing keeping that family in their home.